Well, good morning, stream. How did you do this? Hello. What are you blaming me for? What? Oh, you did tell me about this, yes. I take full I take full responsibility. Why am I not snapping? Snapping. Now you are snapping. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess I never thought about that, but there is an iOS app but not an Android app. That's probably a barrier for a bunch of people, I would imagine. Hello? Oh. Adobe Audition just hitching up. Audition, stop crashing. This is not fucking amusing anymore. Third time it's crashed on me this morning in the last 8 minutes. Do you need an update? Oh my god. No work for you. thinking. It's thinking real hard. No. No, no, scolds Bane. That way lies failure. Okay. Let's get ready to edit. No solo for you. Mute.
Chapter 22. And was she correct?
No. Absolutely not. How dare you? That doesn't sound like me.
Chapter 22.
There we go.
And was she correct? Said Son. Alburn was studying the streets and barely seemed to have heard Son's question. Kaita, was she correct? Was it soon that she and Mag faced each other at last? Alburn sighed. Still eager for the end. Well, be assured it is coming. It was not long at all before it happened. Thank the sky, said Son. Let us hear it then. Said Alburn. You shall have to wait a little while. We have arrived. He stopped, and Son groaned as she skidded to a halt beside him. They stood in front of a building that looked like a simple shop, but for the thick wooden beam barring the front door. This place, said Son. It looks to be closed. You should keep telling the story while we wait for it to open. It is meant to look abandoned, said Alburn, chuckling. Yet it is very much occupied. Come. He led her around the back of the building. In the rear was another, smaller door. Son had seen this sort of shop before. Behind the door would be a stair leading up to an apartment. Alburn knocked in a strange pattern. 3 times, then a pause, then once, then another pause, and then twice more. Moments passed as Son looked nervously around. They were in a narrow intersection in the alleys between buildings. Though it led to open air in all 4 directions, Son could not help a slight feeling of being trapped. Keep talking while we wait, she whispered. At least tell me what Kaita... With a snap, a latch turned inside the door, and it cracked open. But Son could see that a thick chain was affixed to the inside of it, which kept the door from opening too far.
Danny, I actually worked as a voice actor in LA for a number of years when I was, I guess between 18 and 22 or 23. So I kind of got over the whole changing opinions about my voice back then. I started off working in a sound studio, so I wasn't even evaluating my own voice. I would go in and do scratch VO, which is basically where you need a voiceover for timing purposes, like for a video or an audio or like a commercial or something like that. So I would go in and lay down the scratch VO, which we would then use to edit videos, radio commercials, whatever it was. And then eventually, management at the studio was like, Garrett, do you want to just do the voices? Do you want to just do it? And that launched me into doing a bunch of voice work. So the audiobooks honestly haven't changed my opinion on that too much. I don't think I have the best voice in the world, but I think I have a decent one. And I find it easy to listen to my own audiobooks. So it's sort of very neutral for me.
But Son could see that a thick chain was affixed to the inside of it, which kept the door from opening too far. Through the crack, she saw a man. His face was of a medium brown and wrinkled, though not as heavily as Alburn's. He wore a thin mustache and a scrub of beard that only held to the edge of his chin, but which was neatly trimmed. His clothing had a sort of look Son was well familiar with from up-jumped courtiers back home. Fine quality, but too ostentatious. His hair fell to his shoulders, black but heavily streaked with gray. His eyes were sharp as he took in Alburn, and then his glance flitted to Son. When he spoke, it was with a heavy South-Headish accent and cadence. Alburn, said the man. He undid the chain and opened the door wider. You're late. Only by a few days, old friend, said Alburn. I had some important business to attend in Lanshui. The man sniffed. It's always important business with you. I suppose you should come in. We would not want to trouble you. Did I say you're troubling me? Come, it's bloody warm in this sun. He closed the door and undid the chain before opening it again. He waved a hand to indicate they should climb the stairs. It was less the gesture of a well-mannered doorman and more the furtive command of an irritated parent summoning their children in for dinner. At the top of the stairs was an apartment, as Son had expected. A large central room took up much of the space. Cabinets and shelves of crockery lined the walls, and a hearth dominated the back right corner, though it was now empty and cold. A large wooden table stood in the center. On this was a map of Dorsey and Selvin, with some of the other kingdoms poking in at the edges. Sun spied some markings on the map in various colors, but before she could get a good look at them, the man threw a thin blanket over the map to cover it. "Something to drink?" said the man. "May have a bit of wine," said Albern. "Not too much, though. We need to keep our wits about us today." The man's eyes sharpened at that. "Some trouble in the city?" "Not if we avoid it," said Albern. He sounded unconcerned, but his words reminded Sun of her family. A worried knot formed in her stomach. The man snorted. "Fairly said." His gaze turned upon Sun, and she felt as though she was being inspected like a murky ledger. "You as well?" She felt her cheeks flame. I will have some wine, yes. Thank you." "Welcome." The man went to one of the cupboards and pulled out a bottle, tugging the rag from its neck. He produced 2 glasses and filled them, handing them over. Sun thought it strange that he was not having any himself, and her hackles rose, but then he went to the table in the center of the room. A half-full glass already stood there, and he filled it the rest of the way. Still, she waited for him to drink before she took her first sip. "How goes business?" said Albern. "Have you had any more trouble along the western coast?" "Ha!" spat the man. "The western coast is nothing but trouble these days."
Hey, Brave Bird. No.
"Well, trouble and money, which is the only reason I still deal there. But most of the northern pirates have scuttled into dark holes with the hunt on, and so it isn't as bad as it might be." "That is good to hear," said Albern. He drank deep of his wine. "And how about closer to home?" For the first time, the man gave a smile. It was crafty and seemed to hide many secrets, but it was still a smile.
Damn, Brave Bird. I'm sorry to hear that. Where are you at? Where's the power outage?
"Much better, especially with your help. And speaking of..." He went to another cupboard on the opposite side of the room from the wine. Inside, Sun could glimpse several iron cases that she recognized as lockboxes for coin, as well as piles of bags made from black velvet. He danced his fingers along the bags as if the tips could tell the contents merely by touch. At last, he selected one and...
Your new username fucks me up every time, Erica. Sorry about that.
At last, he selected one and hefted it, tossing it in the air twice. Satisfied, he returned to the table and upended the pouch. Gold scattered across the thin blanket covering the map. Sun guessed there had to be more than 100 weights. She could not stop her eyes from widening. The man spread a hand expansively over the coins. "Payment rendered for services well performed," he said. "I threw in a little bit extra. Loyalty may be its own reward, but I find something a bit heavier provides even more motivation." "And we thank you kindly," said Albern. He began to scoop the gold up, dropping it back into the pouch without counting it, and then he glanced over his shoulder at Sun. "Would you like a separate pouch?" Her throat went dry. A separate one?"
Give that a moment.
"Fine."
Oh.
"Would you like a separate pouch?" Her throat went dry. A separate one?" "Why, yes," said Albern. "Half of this is yours, you know." What am I supposed to do with it?" Albern blinked. "Money can be exchanged for goods and services." Over his shoulder, the strange man turned away, but not quite quick enough to hide a smirk.
One of my favorite jokes I've ever put in a book.
"Glad to see you're keeping witty company these days." Sun's cheeks, already dark, flushed darker still. "I know that," she snapped. "I mean, what am I supposed to do with it now?" Albern shrugged. Tie it to your belt and keep it under your cloak, I suppose. You would not want to lose it to a cut purse. And try not to spend it all today. I have one more place to visit, and you may find a profitable use for it there. But Again, Sun looked at the size of the purse in Albern's hand. That is too much to carry around. It will pull my belt straight off. Albern turned to give the stranger a look. The man sighed before turning and stepping behind a half wall that obscured the rear left of the apartment. In a moment he reappeared, carrying an odd sort of wallet. It was made of well-worn leather, and it had thick, long straps. The man tossed it to Albern, who caught it deftly and turned to Sun. You may buckle this around your chest, he said. It will keep the purse slung against your right shoulder. You will appear to have a slight hunch under your cloak, but it is more comfortable than having the pouch hang from your belt. Or you can fit this into your saddlebag. Thank you, said Sun, taking it from him. Then she turned to the stranger. I can pay you for this. He gave her a thin smile. Pray don't worry about it. Call it another bonus. For him, not for you. May it in time you'll provide enough services to earn such rewards. Sun did not know quite what to say to that, particularly since she did not know what services had been performed for all this coin in the first place. She scooped her gold into the purse and strapped it over her shoulder. It did indeed hang comfortably on her, and she decided to keep it there rather than put it in her saddlebag. She had never held this much money before in her life. Of course, she had seen this much, but it had all belonged to her family, and they never let her touch it or choose how to spend it. I believe that's all the dealings we have for today, said the strange man. Do let me know if you see to that business along the South Sylvan border, old man. Albern snorted. Scarcely older than you. But you are older than me. Albern chuckled and reached out his left hand. The man took his wrist and they shook. Then Albern motioned Sun to the back stairs before descending them himself. Before she followed him, Sun turned to their host. Thank you, she said, for the coin and the wine. I am Sun of the... that is, just Sun. His eyes flashed, but he did not ask about the words she had abandoned. It's been my pleasure, Sun. If I can ask, have you met any of Albern's other friends? Sun blinked. The question seemed to hold hidden meaning, but she had no idea what it might be. We met a woman named Dewan in Lanshui, she ventured. No, said the man, shaking his head. Here in Bertram. Never you mind. Just look after yourself, and him. That man's worth a fair spot of coin to me. The words were quite mercenary, but Sun thought she caught concern in the man's eyes. It reminded her of Dewan's parting words, a quiet plea the Medica had whispered in her ear when Albern was not listening. Nodding, she turned to follow Albern out of the apartment. Only when they were back outside did she realize that the stranger had never given his name. Sun's mouth twisted, but she decided to leave it. Well, she said instead, I suppose you have no intention of telling me what that was all about? You suppose quite correctly, said Albern, but you may learn in time. If we have enough time, said Sun. I fear that there are not enough years left in your life to tell me of all the years that came before. Oh, come now, said Albern, nudging her shoulder. In only a few days I have told you the story of many months. You will catch up eventually, and should not feel too badly about being so slow. Sun whirled on him. Me slow? You were the one... But Albern laughed and stepped for the mouth of the alley, back towards the street. Sun followed him, fuming, but mostly for show. She enjoyed the easy rapport she and Albern had built together, and which had seemed to come to them quite quickly. It reminded her of the old man's conversations with Mag. And as she thought of that, it occurred to Sun that such familiarity might be a double-edged sword to Albern. Surely he enjoyed the return to a time where he had a traveling companion he could jest with, and who would return jokes as easily as she took them. But at the same time, she must be a poor replacement for Mag, and a constant reminder of what he had lost years ago. Her mood dampened. Pulling her cloak tighter about her, she started to follow Albern into the street. But then she leaped back, dragging Albern with her. Two riders on horseback thundered through the place he had been standing. Sun took an angry step after them, opening her mouth to call out. She froze as she saw cloaks of black and gold, the colors of her family. "Albert," she whispered, her voice full of fear. "I see them," he muttered. Together they moved into the alley's shadows, watching as the riders hit a bend in the street and passed out of sight. "A good thing you were wearing that borrowed cloak," said Albern softly. "They did not recognize you." "Yet they must know I am in the city," said Sun. "Why else would they be in Bertram? We have to leave." "There are 1,000 reasons they might be in Bertram." Albern's voice was calm, as though he was trying to talk down a rearing horse. "We knew they might have sent out scouts in many directions, hoping to catch you in a wide net. This might be no more than that. They were not keeping too careful an eye out, or they would have looked more closely at your face." I should get new clothes," said Sun, "and may have some sort of mask. The hood may not be enough." "As soon as we may." A sudden smile crossed Albern's lips. "After all, we have the coin for it."
Hey, Vale. Good morning. How you doing?
Despite herself, Sun gave a little smile in return, and her fingers rose to slide along the straps of her...
Clicky click.
Despite herself, Sun gave a little smile in return, and her fingers rose to slide along the straps of her new purse. I suppose we do." "They have no way of knowing you are here," said Albern. "Not for certain. We are not in danger yet." Sun blew a heavy sigh out through her nose. "Mayhap not, but let us keep it that way. We should leave Bertram now. We have enough coin for the next leg of the journey. Whatever your other business here, you can return for it later." Albern hesitated, and his gentle smile faded away. "I cannot. Someone is expecting to meet me here today, and if I do not appear, it will cause trouble. I'm sorry, Sun, but I have to see this through. I hope you will come with me." A rising tide of panic threatened to make her vomit. "How urgent can these errands be? When we were in Lanshui, you made it seem like Bertram was one of many choices. Was that true? Or did you always mean to come here, no matter what I said?" Albern did not hesitate in the slightest. "Both," he said. "We could have gone another way if you wanted. My errands here could have waited a few days or even as much as a week or two, but I always intended to come to Bertram eventually. And now that I am here, I must finish my business in the city. If you wish to leave Bertram at once, there are places I can arrange for you to go. You can return when you and I are both assured it is safe. But if you stay, I do not think you will regret it." The offer to send her away was tempting. She feared to stumble into another of her family's guards out here on the bustling streets. And she thought of herself far away, spending her days in an inn, with plenty of coin to pay for food and ale while she waited for Albern to fetch her. But then she thought of being alone, of Albern's absence, and what if her family found her regardless of her caution? Then Albern would not be there to help her escape them. That was not such a tempting thought after all. Albern seemed to spy the indecision in her eyes, for he spoke again. "Remember what I told you not long ago. My family tried to pull me back into their clutches, but they failed. You will not be taken anywhere while I draw breath. Something you should do, by the way." She sucked in a deep gasp of air and then let it out in a rush. For a moment she felt lightheaded, but then her head seemed to clear, and she came to a decision. Very well, she said. I will stay with you. But for the sky's sake, please do your business in the city quickly. As quickly as I may, said Albert. And if you wish, I will not continue the story until we know we are safe again. Do you jest? Grumbled Sun. I need something to distract me. Say on.
Say on, Macduff. That's not the line. All right, I'm going to upload this chapter, and then I got to run the kids to the bus really quick, but that will be, then I'll be back in another 15 minutes or so. Excuse me. And then we shall continue. Shut up and dance with me. This woman is my destiny. Wonderful, and come on. You can do it. I believe in you. Think harder. There we go. Okay, I'm off. Back in about 15, I will leave you with the sweet, dulcet tones of Autumn Orange.
Traveler told me to have faith. I know that this is who you are. I'm going to have faith in you, Yasha. And I hope that the Storm Lord can bring you home. and back to who you really want to be. And I hope that the storm lord can bring you home and back to who you really want to be. Thank you, Chester. Go hug Yasha around the waist. Thank you, Chester.
If you knew he was your dad, would you be proud of that? Happy?
I don't know, I was just kind of happy that I knew. You know, Mama seems so sure. But if he doesn't want me, then I don't want him. It's fine.
Sometimes it's hard to write them off. Give it some time. I'm sorry that your father has not been a part of your life. He is the one who has missed out.
How is she? Marion?
So you do know her.
Once.
Did you love her?
Yeah. And I couldn't come back.
Why?
It wasn't until she told me about her feelings that I found myself lacking to meet the standards of such a vibrant creature as her. I was nothing. I had nothing. So I told myself I would find a fortune and come back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
She loves you. You should have trusted her. Why didn't you just say yes? I sent you so many messages. I sent you so many messages. Just... You could have just said yes. I'm your dad. Oh man, Chester. I didn't know about you, but man, I really want to hang out and get to know you.
We back. Thank you very much for the heads up in chat, Scoldsbane. I did have my computer speakers turned way down in OBS. So, as I am about to start the audiobook again, if you are listening to me right now, I will give you a few seconds to adjust your headphones and make sure I don't blow out your eardrums. Hopefully it'll be fine. It shouldn't be too much louder than my voice is right now, but just in case you have been warned.
Chapter 23. Well, you remember that we had driven the shades into the hills north of the Green Frost. While our company set up camp in the wood, Coon gathered two and the sergeants for a small council after the battle. His customary smile was absent. Soldiers had died that day. He found a large rock to use as a makeshift table and laid a map of the area upon it. With one hand wrapped around his chin, he studied it as he spoke to us. "Our foes will not go far tonight," he said. "They are already weary, for they have pressed their march hard, and now they have wounded to tend to. We can wait for the rest of our forces to arrive in the night, and then we can wipe them out at our leisure. Let the company rest and recover themselves. What were our losses?" "None from Black Squadron," I said. The other archer sergeants gave the same reply. "None from Green," said Mag. "A few cuts and bruises, but nothing to slow anyone down." "I lost 3, sir," said Yue, in a voice sharp as flint. "And 4 wounded." My gaze snapped to her. Her face was stony, and her eyes were not quite on Coon, but staring over his shoulder into the far distance. Coon sighed. "The bodies?" "The rest of Blue Squadron is seeing to them now," said Yue. It sounded as though she was about to say more, but she did not. "Very well," said Coon. "As for my unit, 6 mystics fell. 8 more were wounded, but only 2 very badly. That leaves just over a score at fighting strength. I will have to share the burden of the center line in future battles." "Understood, sir," I said. Mag looked troubled, and she remained silent. "At least their lives were not given in vain," Coon went on. "1.5 score of our foes lie dead. My best guess is that at least that many more are grievously wounded, which will slow down the rest of them. It is never easy to lose a comrade, but our fellows who ventured into the darkness today made the enemy pay dearly in blood. We who survive must honor them." "Yes, sir." This time the whole council spoke in unison. "Good," said Coon. "Lieutenant Shi, see that sufficient sentries are posted to prevent any surprises. The rest of you, see to the arrangements of your units. If any soldier has snuck wine or ale into their packs, let them enjoy it moderately, and have them share with their fellows as well. Everyone deserves a drink tonight, if they wish it. Dismissed." "Captain," I said, throwing up a hand. "One more thing, if I may." Everyone had been turning to head away, but now they all stopped. Captain Coon looked at me, surprised. "Sergeant?" "Sir," I said. "A woman led the enemy today, a tall brute of a fighter." Coon's expression darkened. Most of the mystics who had died had fallen at her hands. "I noticed her." "Then I'm certain you noticed her healing from the wounds we dealt her. I've faced one like her before, sir. They are favored soldiers among the shades, imbued with some dark magic given to them by their lord. As long as the enchantment holds, they can heal from any as long them by their lord. As long as the enchantment holds, they can heal from any injury, even fatal ones. I watched as Kuhn's jaw clenched twice. Formidable indeed, he said. But not invincible, I said. I spoke to you before of Jordell of the family Adair. It was he who discovered how to defeat them. The one we faced in the Great Rocks had a tattoo on the back of his neck. That was what contained the enchantment. Jordell destroyed the man's tattoo, and that made it possible for him to die. If we should engage the brute again, we should seek to destroy the tattoo first. It will not be easy, but if we can manage it, we can bring her down. Kuhn's gaze roved across the little council. You all heard him. Relay the instructions to your troops, as I will relay them to my mystics. Sleep well. With a chorus of, Sir, we set about our tasks. As Mag, Yue, and I headed for our squadrons, I glanced back over my shoulder. Kuhn was bent over his map. Still he wore no smile, and his brow was furrowed as he studied the parchment. I tried to put him from my mind as I turned to the others. Yue, are you all right? I'm fine, she said. We know what it is to lose people in your command, Mag said gently. Then you know nothing you can say will ease my mood, said Yue. Let us see to our duties. I want something to do. We reached the middle of the camp, which was still being built around us. Before parting from Yue, I stepped up to her and placed a hand on her arm to keep her from running off. It took a moment, but she met my gaze. I'm here, I said quietly. Do not forget it. Yue scoffed. As if you have ever let me since the day we met, she grumbled. But her words were not as fiery as she tried to make them sound. I pulled her into an embrace, and then I went to see to my squadron. They had already put up their tents and were building fires, around which they had gathered with Mag's unit. Halan noticed me as I walked up, and his beard jumped as he nodded. Sergeant? He and some of the others started to rise from where they were sitting. At ease, I said, motioning them all to stay down. Let us get those fires going and have a meal. The captain also gave explicit orders. If anyone has anything finer than water to drink, they are commanded to enjoy it and share it with their fellows. But do not get too drunk. That got a few laughs from them, as well as half-hearted cheers. Jian dug into her pack and pulled out a large, full skin. She waved it in the air with a grin. Wine, Sergeant? Sky above, yes, I said, taking the skin from her. It was far from the best I had ever had, but as I am sure you have realized since we met, anything you drink after a fight tastes 10 times better than it should. I took a deep pull and handed it back to her. Thank you, Jian. You handled yourself well today. Thank you, Sergeant, she said, taking a swig. Then she turned and offered it to Chausaku, who sat close by. Some for you? Chausaku looked somewhat surprised. Yes, thank you. Captain's orders, said Jian with a shrug, pushing her hair back. So, what do you think, now that you have seen a real fight? As he lowered the wineskin, Chausaku's expression darkened. We survived. I call that a good result. As do I, said Jian amiably. I even killed one of the bastards, and with a gut shot as well. I aimed for the chest, as you said, Sergeant, but I am glad I was off. Chausaku did not answer, but rose with a glower and walked away. I frowned at Jian. What pleasure do you gain from goading him? She grinned. I suppose I enjoy the reaction. It is so easy to get from him. I sighed. Jian, you still seem to think this is some kind of game. You want to punish those you see as evil, but you see your fellows as competitors, not allies. When a battle does not go so well, you will wish you were with friends, instead of people you have only mocked since the day you met." Her expression soured, and she took another pull from her wine. "It will be a dark day indeed before I need someone to coddle me." I shook my head and left her, walking to where Halan was getting his campfire going. A cloud of thick, acrid smoke poured from the logs he had stacked together. Halan cursed and coughed into his thick beard, pulling off his spectacles and swiping at his eyes. My nose began to sting as I approached him. "Halan," I said, "are you all right?"
"Fine, sir," he wheezed. "It's this damn wood. Burns like dark fire."
"It is the Pycnandra," said Debu. He was there with Lee, who was staring at the burgeoning flame. She did not appear to notice anyone around her, but was lost in her own wandering mind. "Their sap is what turns the trees green when they freeze, but it burns like poison." Mag approached, coming from the line of her squadron's tents. "I knew someone was trying to burn the greenwood. You can smell it from a span off. Find something else for fuel, or we will all be hacking and coughing through the night."
"Oh, they tell me now,"
grumbled Halan. He yanked the logs out of the fire and doused them in a puddle of rainwater on the ground, before rising to find other fuel. But before he could leave, I saw two approaching. "Squadrons," I called out. "Officer present." Mags and my unit stood and snapped to attention. Two came to a stop, folding his hands behind his back and giving us all a nod. "Good eve, all of you," he said, his voice carrying through the evening air. "I have come to relay the captain's compliments. You all carried yourselves well today, and the plan was as successful as could be expected. You have his thanks as well as mine." "Sir," we replied in chorus. "As you were," he said. "Enjoy your rest tonight, for you all deserve it." As most of them returned to their seats, he came to me and Mag. Mag raised a hand in greeting. "Lieutenant," she said. "Sergeant," said two. "In particular, I wanted to relay my appreciation to you. You were on the front lines, but you did not lose even one sword. That is worthy of high praise." Before Mag could answer, Debu stood from his seat and stepped up to join the rest of us. "It is worth more than praise, Lieutenant," he said, folding his bronzed arms behind his back. "Watching her was like witnessing an elf tale. She was everywhere in the fight. Her spear was like lightning from the sky." Mag's jaw clenched. Two seemed to notice it, for a small smile crossed his lips as he stroked his goatee and cleared his throat. "No doubt she was impressive, and yet she was not the only one who gave a good showing. You fought well today, soldier. Even better than you did against me in the trial."
Hey, what's up, Beep End? Enjoy your lurk.
Debu's mouth worked. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Your training has been invaluable." "Good training still requires a good student," said two. "It is a rare pleasure to find one who so easily takes lessons to heart. And that goes for all of you." He placed a hand briefly on Debu's muscular arm before stepping past him to Lee. She still sat on the ground, and she was staring at the fire Halan had been trying to build. Its embers were dead now, but she did not seem to have noticed. "How are you, Lee?" said two, more quietly now. The sound of her name seemed to break her reverie. Lee looked up at him, eyes lost for a moment. "I am fine, sir." "You survived your first battle," he said. "You should be proud." She gave a brief, humorless laugh. "How can I be proud of something I had little hand in? Were it not for Debu, I would be a corpse burning with the others. He saved my life and killed two of the enemy to do it." "Yet you rose again," said Debu, stepping up beside two. "And you claimed one foe for yourself before the end of the fight. The lieutenant is right, Lee. You should be proud." Lee nodded, but from her expression you would have thought she did not even hear them. Two gave a little sigh and stood, turning to Debu once more. "Well, I do not wish to take up too much of your time.
I only wanted to pass on the captain's praise. Dorsey is indebted to you all for your service today. And so am I. Debu swallowed hard and bowed his head. Sir? Tu gave Mag and me a quick nod, and then he set off to do his rounds with the rest of the squadrons. When I turned to look at Mag, she was fighting hard to contain a smile. What are you grinning about? I asked her. Oh, nothing, said Mag. Only it seems we are in the captain's good graces at last. And about time, I said, one step closer to Kaita. That caused her smile to evaporate at once. Yet not quite close enough. Not yet, I told her, but soon. Come now, let us get our people situated and then get ourselves to bed. I will sleep like a rock tonight. As if you ever sleep any other way, said Mag. I snorted and shoved her shoulder, and she shoved me back, which sent me stumbling 3 paces. I went and checked on my squadron's tent lines, made sure they knew their watch schedule, and then started making my way to my tent. I still had not seen Yue, but I knew it would be best to leave her alone until she was ready. But on my way to bed, I spotted Chausaku. He stood a little apart from the rest of the camp, away from the fires, staring out into the green frost with his hood drawn up. I approached, and as he heard my footsteps coming, he looked over at me. Sir, he said, nodding. Good eve, I said. You should be getting yourself to sleep. I will, sir, he said. But my mind is racing now, and I'm trying to let it wear itself out. I confess I sometimes need the same. I stood beside him, folding my arms over my chest for warmth. Today was your first taste of battle, and you did well. But how are you, really? I know you did not enjoy it, as Jian did. Chausaku snorted. That I did not. I cannot understand that woman, and I doubt I ever shall. Give it time, I said. You are united in purpose, even if you view the purpose differently. I know that to be true, yet I find it hard to believe, said Chausaku with a sigh. Her bloodlust is unnerving. I answered Captain Zhu's call because I care about Dorsey, and I would not see my nation betray the High King. But I could have gone my whole life without killing another person, and I would have been happier for it. Would not we all, I said, if only the world were gentle enough to allow it. Yet still, you and Jian may find common ground in the end. I hesitate to hope for it may require the war to go on for a long while. But if it does, do not be surprised if you find yourselves becoming fast friends. Like you and Mag, said Chausaku with a smirk. I confess I cannot see it. Well, mayhap not like us, I admitted. Mag is easier than most to be friends with. And yet she is so terrifying in a fight, said Chausaku with a shudder. I could hardly believe it. She deserves every legend I have ever heard of her. How did you become such good friends anyway, when she is so much younger than you? That made me laugh. It will surprise you to learn that she is, in fact, a little older than I am. We met when I had not quite seen my 20th year, and she was already as good a fighter as she is today. Chausaku's eyes were wide in his dark face. Really? I would have thought she was a decade younger than you at least. I would believe you if you said you were twice as old as her. Then suddenly he looked uncomfortable. Meaning no insult about your appearance, of course, Sergeant. My easy smile widened and I shook my head. I'm sorry to disappoint you, soldier. Some people hardly seem to age, and some, well, I waved my hand up and down the length of my body. Chausaku snorted, trying not to laugh. Well, in any case, you were lucky to have her for a friend, and now I think my mind has indeed tired itself out. I will see you in the morning, Sergeant. He turned and left me. It always amused me how shocked people were when they learned the truth about Mag's age compared to her looks. But Mag had aged, I knew. I remembered her when she was younger, and I knew her now. She was different, if not as different as I was. Sometimes being close to a tale keeps us from seeing it clearly. A soldier on the battlefield might slay 2 foes and think the battle is close to 1. But the general on the hill... He turned and left me. But Mag had aged, I knew. But Mag... I remember... But I remembered her when... But I remembered her... But Mag had aged, I knew. I remembered her when she was younger, and I knew her now. She was different, if not as different as I was. Sometimes being close to a tale keeps us from seeing it clearly. A soldier on the battlefield might slay 2 foes and think the battle is close to 1. But the general on the hilltop can see foes sweeping around the flanks and taste the coming defeat. But sometimes being close to a tale is what shows us the truth of it. We can see clearly the sunlight on a fish's rainbow scales, while someone on the shore sees only an ugly trout through muddy, churning waters. That is how it was with Mag and me. Certainly she was someone you had to see up close to believe. If you believe in stories, that is. Ah well. I turned my steps towards my tent, and soon I was abed. I was alone for a long while, as Yue spent time with her squadron, mourning their losses with them. But even before she returned, I slept poorly. Roots kept digging into my head, and I could not seem to get rid of them, no matter how I tried to shift on the forest floor. Metaphor.
All right, that chapter's uploading. Gonna use the restroom real quick. Be right back. Ugh. Ooh-ah. 23 is done. Most excellent. Excuse me.
Chapter 24. Now, I have commented on Mag's appearance before this, but it is worth noting that she always looked younger than she was, even when she lived in that village called Shuiniu. 10 years before Mag and I met, she had just begun her apprenticeship under Duana. Of course, she did not have a hand in the brewing straight away. As is the case with many apprentices, she spent her first several months taking care of odd jobs around the brewery. She would sweep up shavings, fix small things that had broken, and haul water and grain from one place to another as required. All the while, Duana would explain the craft to her, indoctrinating her into the finer aspects of the art. And Duana would tell stories. It seemed she was a tale spinner of sorts, though none so fine as Dryleaf. But mayhap that is one reason Mag and I became such good friends. She always loved stories, and she would listen with rapt attention as Duana told tales of long ago. She heard stories of the time before time and the founding of Underrealm, the dark days of the Wizard Kings, and many great heroes and terrible villains scattered throughout the countless years of history. And then, one day, Duana said something that made Mag frown and stop in the middle of her work. "What is that?" said Mag. Her eyes were wide, and her hand stilled where it had been wiping a brewing vat with a rag. Duana looked at her in mild surprise. With a giant wooden spoon, she had been stirring a large cauldron as it came to a boil. Now she glanced at the spoon, the cauldron, and the beginnings of her next brew. "What is what?" she asked. "The word you just said," said Mag. "Meldin? That is the name of the dragon in the tale." "Not the name, that other word. The dragon?" said Duana. "What about it?" A shadow seemed to come over Mag's face, her expression a cloud of confusion. "What is that? Is it an animal?" Duana studied Mag, who seemed held as if frozen in ice, and the old brewer felt a powerful, mournful sadness enclose her heart. She often forgot how many little things like this Mag did not know, things that most children learned from bedtime stories. But then, most children heard those tales from their parents, and Mag had had no such opportunity. "They were not animals," said Duana quietly. "They were something more. Do you know of satyrs or centaurs?" Finally Mag moved, but only to give a tiny nod. "You told me of centaurs." "Then you know they have bodies like animals, but they are clever of mind like we are," said Duana. "Dragons are something like that, but far greater and more terrible. They are more akin to elves." Mag nodded quickly, eager to please. "I know of elves." Duana smiled again. "Good. If you have heard of them, you can get an idea of dragons." "Are they the same size as us, like elves?" said Mag. "Or are they smaller, like imps?" "Neither," said Duana. and despite herself she felt a tremor of fear. They were vast in size. The span of their wings was like the length of the ships that sail the deep ocean, and they could swallow a horse in a single bite. From their mouths they could spew a noxious fume that choked the lungs and dissolved the flesh. But they could also command fire magic and set their breath ablaze, and then the fume became dark fire. They could burn whole towns in blasts of flame. She saw suddenly that Mag was trembling where she stood. Her eyes had filled with tears, and she had dropped her washcloth to the ground. "Here now," said Duana, rushing to her. She wrapped her arms around Mag's shoulders and held her close, while Mag clutched the front of her shirt and buried her face in her chest. "Will they come for me?" said Mag, her voice incredibly small. "Never," said Duana. "They all vanished from Underrealm long ago." Mag stopped shaking, and she looked up at Duana with a frown. "Where did all of them go?" she said quietly, fearfully. "We do not know," said Duana, "but we need not concern ourselves with it now. No one has seen them in hundreds of years, not since the very earliest days of Underrealm." Mag nodded, scrubbing tears from her eyes with the back of a dirty hand. "All right," she said. Soon Duana had her back to her chores, and Mag's mood rose as she got to work. But it was a long, long time before Duana ever ventured to tell her another tale of dragons.
I don't know why I traumatize my own characters, and then when I am experiencing the story again for whatever reason, when I'm editing it or whatever, I just want to, like, protect them. I'm like, no, it's okay. You're okay. You're okay. You're going to be fine. It's like, motherfucker, you did this to me. The only reason I'm traumatized is because you decided I was. Don't tell me I'm going to be okay. You know what happened to me. You did it. Oh, boy. Oh, my back.
Chapter 25. But let us return to the Green Frost. In the hours before dawn, the rest of Kuhn's army arrived at our camp. Zhen, Kuhn's nephew, had marched his troops through the night. I was asleep when they arrived, but I woke when I heard the commotion at the east end of camp. There was a tense, silent moment in my tent while I tried to hear whether it was sounds of battle or not. When I heard no shouting or clashing steel, I guessed that Zhen must have arrived. Beside me, Yue was peaceful in sleep, breathing gently through her mouth. I shook her. "Yue," I said, "wake up. The reinforcements have arrived." "Was?" she mumbled, sitting up in the darkness and rubbing at her eyes. I could barely see her in the dim firelight leaking through the tent. "The rest of the troops," I said. "Kuhn may need us. We should get up." All right, grumbled Yue. She began to pull on her clothes. I had slept in mine, so I donned my boots and slipped out of the tent into the open air. The earliest signs of gray had begun to edge into the sky above me as I studied the road to the east. It was filled with people now, marching troops, all looking weary but resolute, with wagons and pack animals behind them. As I studied them, a woman ran up. I recognized her as one of the captain's messengers. "I have a message for Lieutenant Shi," she said, "but he is not in his tent." "He is not?" I said, frowning. "I will look for him. May I relay the captain's message?" "I suppose," said the woman. "It is nothing secret. Captain Zhu wishes to send scouts to locate the shades. They are to be selected from Lieutenant Shi's company, since they have had several hours of sleep now. The captain needs to discuss the plan with the lieutenant." "Understood," I said. "I will send the lieutenant along as soon as I find him." She nodded and ran off. Just then, Mag emerged from her tent. "Mag," I said, "good morn, or close enough to it. The captain sent word—" "I heard," said Mag. "Where do you think Tu has gone?" I shrugged. "I hardly think anything sinister can have happened. The sentries gave no alarm, and everything else seems to be in order." Mag's mouth twisted. "Let us check his tent, just to be sure." We jogged there as the murmur of voices grew towards the east end of camp. Some troops were throwing themselves straight onto the ground, as though they meant to sleep before even building tents. I thought they might change their minds once the slushy snow soaked their clothes. Tu's tent was empty, as the messenger had said. I turned to Mag with a shrug. "Mayhap he is at the latrines," I said. "Foreign water can ruin any soldier's rest. At the very least, we know our squadrons are likely to be the ones sent to scout for the shades. I think we should rouse them to get ready for the captain's order." "Let us do it then," said Mag, who still looked worried. "But we need to find Tu as quickly as possible." "We can search for him while our troops are readying themselves," I said. Our squadron's tents were lined up next to each other, with the flaps facing an open lane between them. Mag took her squadron's tents on the left, and I took mine on the right. We went down the line, throwing open the tents and ordering our soldiers to wake and ready for the day. Halan and Chausiku snapped awake at once, while Jian complained at me until I cut off her words with the tent flap. Mag went down her line until about halfway down when she reached the tent that belonged to Dibu. She threw open the flap and froze. I saw it and I paused. She threw open... Slowly, I approached from behind Mag. My can search for him while our troops are readying themselves, I said. Squadron's tents were lined up. Halan and Chausiku. She threw open the flap and froze. I saw it and I paused. Slowly, I approached from behind Mag, my brow furrowing. "Mag? What is—" "Lieutenant," said Mag, trying desperately and failing to keep laughter out of her voice. "Sergeant," came Tu's bleary voice from inside Dibu's tent. My eyes adjusted to the dim campfire light, and I could see him staring out at us, alongside Tu, both of them shirtless and wrapped together in a bedroll. They looked to have just woken up. "Orders from the captain, sir," I called out, my expression deadpan. "He requests your presence to discuss the assignment of a scouting party to hunt down the shades. We are mustering our squadrons in anticipation that it might be us." "Very good," said Tu in a resigned voice. "I shall be along presently." "As you say, sir," said Mag. Her gaze swiveled to Dibu. You have a quarter hour, soldier. She let the tent flap fall, and we collapsed in on ourselves. Seizing each other's shoulders, we shook with laughter that we tried frantically to silence. We were reduced to stumbling through the rest of the tents, throwing up the flaps and gasping out, "Muster!" before choking back another peal of hysterics. Yue came to us when we had almost finished, and she scowled down at me. "What under the sky has gotten into you?" she said. "You look fit to erupt, and I do not like the way that vein is throbbing in your forehead." I said nothing, but only pointed back down the line as I kept giggling. Tu was just emerging from Dibu's tent. His cloak was in his hand, and he whirled it on against the cold before marching off towards his tent. Yue stared at him for a moment, frowning. "Oh," she said slowly. Then her face lit with understanding. She said slowly. She said slowly. Then her face lit with understanding. "Oh, I knew it," said Mag. "I knew it from the first." "Knew what?" I said. "The two of them?" Wait. A realization struck me. "Is this why you put Dibu against him for the test?" "I did not know the captain would choose two, so of course not," said Mag. "I picked Dibu because he was the best I had, but I was elated when the captain chose two." I buried my face in my hand. "You are the most conniving." "I already told you I had no idea who the captain would choose," said Mag, folding her arms with a smug grin. "Are the two of you done with petty gossip?" said Yue with a scowl. "Our squadrons are supposed to be assembling for muster." "You are right," I said. "Let us get them in line." It was not very long before it was done. Tu appeared, and Kun walked beside him. Kun's smile was back, and it looked no less bright for the early hour. He nodded to the sergeants, and the whole company gave him a salute. Tu studiously avoided looking at Mag and me, and I am confident our foolish grins never left us. "Good morning," said Kun. "Today I hope to bring this expedition to a close. We are going to advance into the hills, and we are going to bring our enemies to bay. To ensure our success, I mean to send a scouting party ahead to hamper the Shade's march in any way possible. Lieutenant Shi?" Tu gave him a nod and then addressed us, fixing Mag and me with a steely gaze. "Black Squadron, Green Squadron, you will form the scouting party. Head north into the hills, track the Shades down, and follow them. Each of you fetch one horse from the train. Use them to rotate messengers back to camp, informing the captain of the Shade's movement." "Sir," said Mag and I together. I believe we kept our tone somewhat professional. "The main force will advance behind you," said Kun. "I am giving the reinforcements 2 hours to rest from their march, and then we will follow you into the hills. We will catch the Shades and wipe them out. A swift and fitting end for those who have betrayed the High King and all the 9 kingdoms." Suddenly he paused, and though his smile remained, his brows furrowed. "Sergeant Baolan?" Mag and I looked at Yue in surprise. She had her hand raised, and she kept her eyes fixed on the captain. "Blue Squadron is available for the scouting party as well, sir." Kun's smile softened. "Thank you, Sergeant Baolan. Green Squadron and Black Squadron will serve for the purpose, though your willingness is appreciated." "We owe them a debt of blood, sir," said Yue fiercely. "And you will pay it," said Kun. He stepped closer to her and lowered his voice so that only Tu and we sergeants could hear. "I am not holding you back to slight you. You lost people yesterday. That is a tragic honor, but an honor nonetheless. Let the fresher squadrons take the floor now." "Sir," began Yue. "No, Sergeant," said Kun, but gently. "This is an order, and if you need further assurance, think of the fact that I am keeping my mystics with the main force as well. Do you think that an insult to them?" Yue's nostrils flared. "Of course not, sir." "Then be at peace." Kuhn stepped back and once again spoke to the whole company. "You have your orders. Dismissed." "Yes, sir," we cried in chorus. Mag turned to me. "Ready for another day on the field?" I glanced sidelong at Yue, who was fuming and not looking at either one of us. "I suppose so," I said. "But quickly, before we go, we should speak with Dryleaf. I would guess he has been worried about us while he followed along in the train with Zhen." With Yue, we hurried to the east end of the camp, where Zhen's troops were getting themselves arranged. In the rear of the column, with the other followers, we soon found Dryleaf by the sound of Oku's excited barks. As soon as the hound scented us, he came bounding forwards with a loud baying of joy, and Dryleaf followed behind. Orla and Nikau were with him, each of the lovers holding one of his arms, but for comfort rather than to help him along. "Are those my friends?" he called out, feeling his way forwards with his walking stick. "How have you fared without me here to protect you?" "Well enough, old man," said Mag with a laugh, taking his shoulder and guiding him to us. "We appreciate your service in guarding the reinforcements." "One does what one can, I suppose," said Dryleaf. His head swung back and forth. "Alban? Yue?" "We are here," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Yue still looked dour, but she said, "And safe enough. Do not worry yourself." "Not for a moment," said Dryleaf, but the relief on his face gave lie to the words. I looked to Nikau. "Were things well on the march?" "Well enough. We did not press ourselves as hard as you did, but we missed you." He put a hand on Yue's arm. "Nothing is as fun when all the most interesting folk have left." Yue could not restrain a grin, and she scratched the back of her head. Dryleaf's smile widened as he spoke. "Well, here we are, reunited. What fresh dangers do we expect to face now?" I gave a glance at Yue. "Kuhn is sending Mag and me to scout for the shades," I said. "Once we have pinpointed them, he will bring the rest of the force north to wipe them out." "Into the hills, you mean?" said Dryleaf. "I spoke with Lieutenant Zhu while we have been marching west to catch up with you, and he told me the lay of the land." "They should be easy to find," I said, "especially with the wounded we left them after our last scrap." Dryleaf's face grew worried. "That is good, but take care that you do not grow overconfident. I know one reason we brought them to bay here was so that the landscape would give them no advantage. But our enemies are wily, and may yet have tricks up their sleeves." "We will be careful," said Mag. "Too careful in some cases," muttered Yue. Dryleaf's head turned towards her quizzically, but when she said nothing more, he let it be. "Good, good. You should take Oku with you when you go. The poor boy has been frantic with boredom." "You should take Oku with you when you go. The poor boy has been frantic with boredom during our march." "Gladly will we do so now that you have a chance to rest," I said. "Oku, Tis." The hound darted to my side and sat, looking up at me expectantly. "Rest, yes," said Dryleaf, sighing. "I will treasure the next few hours in my tent. But give them a happy ending, and come back to me safe." "Safe and victorious," said Mag. "That is a promise, or as close to a promise as one can give in war." A shadow passed over Dryleaf's face, but if doubt was in his heart, he did not speak of it before we left him.
$25. Oh, we're getting there. You're getting. Excellent. All right, one more chapter before I have to head out.
Chapter 26. Chapter 26. From the moment we started our trek north, I could see the truth of what Kuhn had told us about these hills. They were gentle and easy, mere ripples in the land, like a slightly rumpled blanket. I chose to climb them as we went, rather than sticking close to the trail the shades had left in the wet ground. It slowed us, but it gave us a better vantage point to see the land around us, and hopefully to spot the shades from afar. Their course wound through the dips, and the furrow they had cut in the land was easy to see, a black slash of mud through the shoots of new grass. A black slash of mud through the shoots of new grass. We advanced as quickly as we could. 3 soldiers in each squadron held torches aloft, one in the front, one in the back, and one in the middle, lighting the way for their fellows. Halan held the front torch in my squadron, so I stayed a good several paces away from him to keep my eyes sharp in the darkness. We climbed over one hill and down the other side to an open space through which our enemies had passed. Open space through which to an open space. to an open space. To an open space.
Climbed over one hill and down the other side to an open space through which our enemies had passed.
A good several paces away from him to keep my eyes sharp in the darkness.
We climbed over one hill and down the other side through an open space through which our enemies had passed. Down the other side, side.
And down the other side.
Side through an open.
Sharp in the darkness. We climbed over one hill and down the other side through an open through which our enemies had passed. As we crossed the Shade's trail,
An open space through which
one hill and down the other side through an open space through which our enemies had passed. As we crossed the Shade's trail, Oku ran back and forth across the black swath and the land, sniffing at their steps. A drizzle began to drift down upon us out of the sky. Ho!
Ho!
Squadron upon us out of the sky. Hold, I said. Our squadron stopped at once. Jian, Chausaku, with me. Halan, you are in charge of Black Squadron until I return, but listen to Mag. Alburn, said Mag, frowning. Where are you going? To the top of the next hill. I pointed to the marks. They stopped here for a while before pressing on. I would guess they sent out scouts looking for a better place to camp. Once they found it, they did not go too much farther before stopping overnight. I should come with you. said Mag immediately. No, I said. Gian and I are quieter, and if we encounter the enemy, we will not be fighting, but running back to you. Then I can help cover your retreat. Mag, no, I'm going ahead, and that is that. We will signal you to follow if we find them. Her mouth worked, but I could see she did not wish to have an argument while the shades could be getting farther away, especially not in front of our squadrons. I turned to Gian and Chausaku again. Come on. Oku padded up to my side, but I held out a hand to stop him. Kip, boy, stay with Mag. He whined and sat back on his haunches. We crept up the hill, the mud helping to keep our footsteps muffled. When we neared the top, I held out a hand to tell them to slow down. We approached the summit at a crawl. Nearly an hour had passed, and the sky kept lightening in the east. I was trying to use that to our advantage. We crept to the top of the hill on our bellies, and I followed the track of the shade's progress. There. I pointed so that Chausaku and Gian could see it too. Outlined against the gray sky far away, I could see a figure. It was only a black silhouette from this distance, and with so little light to illuminate it. But as we watched, a cloak fluttered, the motion making it stand out clearer against the sky. A sentry, I said. A posted one, not a rear scout. That means they are camped just over that hill. Should we eliminate them? Said Gian at once. It might raise the alarm, I said. Better to bring the others forwards and form a plan together. Gian, go to fetch them. She rolled her eyes and growled, but she did it. Soon both squadrons came to the bottom of the hill, where I conferred with Mag. They are over that crest, I said, pointing. Across another open space and then over one more hill. I would guess the distance at 4 spans. Excellent, said Mag. If they are encamped, mayhap we should leave them be for now. I would agree, but dawn is imminent, I said. I cannot imagine they will stay there past sunup. Therefore, I think we should either hold them in place or drive them in the direction we wish them to go. How do you mean to do that? Said Mag. If we circle to the east and attack them from there, they may think the whole host is coming from that direction, I said. Then we can tell Kun to attack from the west and drive the shades straight into his arms. A good plan, save for one detail, said Mag, raising her brows. Kaita's raven form. Dark take me, I said. I forgot about that. There is nowhere to hide from her in these hills, said Mag. Once they are alerted to our presence, we will not be able to conceal ourselves from her sight. Well, first things first, I said. Gian, go back to the captain. Inform him of where the shades are, and tell him we are devising a plan to hold them in place for his advance. Send Chausaku, said Gian at once. He is faster than I am by far. I gritted my teeth. You will be riding a horse. Chausaku's legs give him no advantage in that. Chausaku's legs give him no advantage in that. Jian's cheeks flamed, though she tried to hide it. I mean that he is a better rider, she said. I have scarcely even touched a horse in my life. Fine, I said. Chausaku? Yes, sir, he said, glaring at Jian. He set off, loping towards the horses we had brought, and soon was galloping away south. That leaves us where we started, said Mag. How do we hold them in place? An idea struck me. Kaita is a problem, but she may also be the solution. We should not try to hide at all. Let her see how few of us there are, and let her see that you and I are here. Mag's eyes lit. She will attack, hoping to kill us. Clever. But what if the other shades convince her to flee? I shook my head. I doubt it. After all she has been through in search of us, I cannot believe she would resist such a tasty morsel now. We will appear alone and isolated, with only a paltry 2 squadrons to defend us. I turned my gaze across our units. Little does she know we have the 2 best squadrons in the army. Their chests puffed with pride at that. Gian wore a savage grin. Very well, said Mag. You should advance with 1 or 2 archers and bring down a sentry from afar. Make a stink about it so they raise the alarm. Then retreat to the rest of us as quickly as you can." "Agreed," I said. I turned to Halan once more. "Halan." "I've got them, sir," said Halan. Then he turned an exasperated eye on Gian. "And you should take this one with you. She's eager enough, that's sure." "I suppose she is," I said. "Gian, with me. Stay quiet and do as I say, or I will throw you to the shades myself." Her face went pale. I suspected when she asked to stay, she had not thought she would be going to antagonize the enemy with only me by her side. I will confess I took some grim satisfaction from her expression, but I only let myself enjoy it for a moment. Together we set off into the drizzle and the mud. Instead of northeast where the sentry was, I guided her due north to a hill west of the Shade's camp. By creeping around the southern edge of the hill, I hoped to keep out of the sentry's sight for as long as possible. And we would be in the hill's shadow, weak as it was, so that hopefully he would not notice us until it was too late. Despite her evident anxiety, Gian followed closely in my footsteps. Soon we were at the bottom of the hill where we had seen the guard last time. I could glimpse a bump I thought was their head, far above us. I turned to Gian. "Here we are," I whispered. "I'm taking the kill, and then we are getting out of here. Do you understand?" "Sir," she stammered. "Good," I said. "Stay here." I crept up the hill pace by pace. Slowly the sentry came more fully into view. They must have been tired, for they faced only south, never turning to look left or right. Poor fool, I thought. I knocked, drew, sighed, and loosed. The arrow pierced straight through their head with a soft thunk. I saw a splash of blood erupt, only barely visible as red against the lightening sky. I turned and ran back to Gian as fast as I could. A horn sounded behind us. Soon it was joined by others, and then they sang in chorus, screaming the alert, warning of danger. "That worked perfectly," I cried as I reached Gian. "Now run for your life!"
Okay, I think I can squeeze out one more chapter before I really have to get out of here. And that will also get us to the halfway point for the book, which is exciting. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, living on a prayer. Be funny as hell to throw like a total California surfer accent into an Underrealm audiobook. Night draws near, and the bells toll of danger.
Chapter 27. After the ambush in the woods the day before, Kaita and Tagata had led their forces into the hills to the north. Their troops were in disarray and greatly hampered by the wounded they had to drag with them in their retreat. But Kaita only cared for one of them. "Tagata!" she cried, pressing through the shades to go to her. Tagata's wounds were healing themselves, the Lord's magic melding flesh and skin together. But Tagata had suffered so many grievous injuries that it was a slow process, and she winced and growled through her teeth with every step. As Kaita came running up, Tagata raised a hand to forestall her worry. "I am fine," she said. "The Lord's blessings will not fail me." "This is my fault," said Kaita. "I should have scouted ahead." "You kept your eyes on the force following us, as we both agreed," said Tagata. "Our enemies were clever, and we underestimated them. If you wish to take the blame for that, you must share it with—" Her right leg buckled beneath her, and she fell to the ground. Kaita tried to support her, but it was like catching a falling boulder. "Tagata!" cried Kaita. Her right leg buckled beneath her, and she fell to the ground. Kaita tried to support her, but it was like catching a falling boulder. "Tagata!" cried Kaita. "Are you all right? Does it hurt?" "Not the healing, no," said Tagata through gritted teeth. She tried and failed to regain her feet. "But until the wounds have gone, I can still feel every one." Kaita looked desperately around. They were in the hills now, and could not see very far in any direction.
That's good advice, Novelith.
But though the rolling land blocked sight, it was hardly defensible. The slopes were gentle, and they could be scaled or descended with little effort. She growled in frustration. "I am going to take a look around," she told Tagata. Then she raised her voice to bark at the shades surrounding them. "Halt the march! Stay here until I return!" Gently she removed Tagata's arm from her shoulder and stepped away. Mage light flashed in her eyes, and a moment later she powered into the air on Raven's wings. At once she could see things were even worse than she had feared. They were only a few spans into the hills, but nowhere was there any position better than their current one. The only glimmer of hope came from the fact that, looking south, she could see flashes of firelight in the woods. Her enemies had made camp in the green frost, and were not yet giving chase. She dove back to the ground and resumed her human form. Tagata looked up with blood on her lips. "Are they close?" she said. "They have set up camp in the wood," said Kaita. "And we should do the same. There is no better place to march tonight, and we must get as much rest as we can. You need to heal, and the rest of us need to be fresh tomorrow. They will not simply let us sit here unmolested." "Mayhap we should march a little." Tagata grunted at a stab of pain. She fell back to one knee, clutching the hilt of her greatsword as its tip sank into the ground. "And that is enough of that," said Kaita. "Everyone, set up camp. Sentries on every hill surrounding this dell. Someone raise Tagata's tent for her, now!" Her voice cracked like a whip, and the shades leaped to obey. Kaita went to Tagata and took her hand. Tagata tried to smile at her through the pain racking her body. "You need to rest," said Kaita. "Promise me you will." "It seems I have little choice," said Tagata. "I will be fine in the morning." "Should I stay with you?" Tagata shook her head, sending her heavy auburn hair cascading over her face. "I will be fine, and you will get no rest if you are with me. The healing process is not always pleasant, and less so the worse my wounds." Kaita browbeat the others until they had Tagata's tent up, and then she helped her inside. But she found little rest for herself that night. She found little rest for herself that night. But she found little rest for herself that night. Sleep would not come, and after 2 hours she gave up. She settled for taking flight once more, swooping low over the camp of Kuhn's army in the green frost. The glow of our fires refracted through the emerald trunks, like a crystal that breaks sunlight into many colors. She could not tell which tents were mine or Mag's, yet she could almost feel us below her. More than anything, she wanted to descend upon the camp in a fury, to find us and destroy us. The Magestones were back at the camp, and Tagata was wounded. Kaita could eat them, and she would never be discovered. But Mag and I were among allies, and Kaita had made promises to Rogan. She was worthy of trust, and she had to prove it. And so, many long hours later, she finally returned to her tent. She finally returned to her tent and passed the rest of the night in a sleep almost as restless as my own.
Yeah, I like that one, Novelist.
As my own. When she woke, just before dawn, she emerged into the open air to find Tagata standing there. The Shadeborn's eyes were closed and her shoulders back. Her face tilted slightly up, as though the scent of some treasured dish wafted to her on the breeze. Firelight played across her features, deepening the crags and scars splayed across them. All signs of her injuries were gone. The Lord's blessing had done its work through the night. And now, as Kaita approached, Tagata's eyes opened, and her expression turned grim. "I received a message," she said, "from the Lord." "When?" snapped Kaita, eyes wide. "In the night?" "Yes," said Tagata. "He had dark tidings. Yet the darkness holds a glimmer of hope. But come, we should speak of this privately." She threw back the flap of her tent, and Kaita led the way inside. Sitting so close, she could again feel the heat radiating from Tagata. It almost made her want to cast off her cloak. "What are these tidings?" said Kaita. "We will face our foes in battle again soon," said Tagata. "And we will lose." For a moment Kaita could not speak, but only stared at Tagata in shock. "What do you mean we will lose?" she said. "They will heavily outnumber us," said Tagata. "No strategy we could concoct will work in these hills, and we cannot outrun them. However, this will not be our end. Some of us, at least, will be able to escape." "Then let us escape now," said Kaita. "They have not come to attack us yet. There is still time." "We will not find a way out until the time is right," said Tagata. "The Lord did not know how we would get away, but he said we would see a sign. It shall be a fiery worm." Kaita could only stare in shock for a moment. "Is he—" She stopped herself, for she had come dangerously close to insulting the Lord. "I do not understand. I would think you were joking if I did not know better." "I assure you I am not," said Tagata. She looked at the tent flap mournfully. "We will lose many of our kindred today." Kaita shook her head. "I do not understand this sign." "Today." Kaita shook her head. "I do not understand this sign. Does the Lord mean we will see a dragon? That is impossible." "I doubt it means that," said Tagata. "He tells us what he sees, but it is as I told you before. Things are not always entirely clear." Her frustration mounting, Kaita took several deep breaths in an attempt to find calm. But it only seemed to further stoke the fires of her anger, like bellows to a forge. "This message? I know it is related to the sight you told me of," she said slowly. "But this seems worse than useless. It seems to promise a hope that I cannot envision." "Rarely do I understand the Lord's signs when he relays them to me," said Tagada. "But you must keep faith. Every victory we have seen so far, every stride we have taken in our mission across Underrealm, has come because of the Lord, from his cunning, and from his sight that pierces the veil of time." Again Tagada shook her head. "You say you have fought..." "Cunning, and from his sight that pierces the veil of time." "Sight that pierces the veil of time." Again Kaita shook her head. "You say you have followed his wisdom before, and it has not led you astray. Because I believe in you, I will choose to believe in this. But if our enemies should come upon us, and I see no other choice, I will devour the Mage Stones, Tagada. Whether Mag and Albern are alone or not, I will not let them kill me or you without using every tool at my disposal to kill them first." She half expected Tagada to be angry with her. After all, she was threatening to break the promise she had made to Rogan, and through him to the Lord. But Tagada only looked upon her with profound sadness. "Your choices are your own, dear one," she said quietly. She placed a hand on Kaita's shoulder. "But I hope you will rethink this. Woe betide you if you take the stones outside of the ordained time. His love will be no protection to you then." Kaita quailed for a moment at the strength of certainty in her voice. But then she shook herself, steeling her resolve. "I have said what I have said. Let us muster the troops and march from this cursed land." Horns blew outside the tent. Kaita and Tagada both whipped their heads towards the sound. It came from the south, where their sentries were posted on hills, overlooking the land all around. "And let us do it as soon as we possibly can," muttered Kaita. Muttered Kaita. The horns were still sounding as Kaita took her raven form and launched into the air. Tagada stood beneath her, head tilted upwards, watching her take flight. The sky was still mostly dark, and Kaita blinked hard, trying to make out shapes on the ground below. The campfires had made her night blind. There, 2 figures running west across the hills. Kaita's heart leaped. 2 figures? That could be. She dove closer and recognized me. The person beside me was not Mag, but some other soldier who was unknown to her. Fierce bloodlust thundered in Kaita's veins. I was practically alone. She would not even need mage stones to... Then she spotted Mag and our squadrons not far off. A quick count told her our number, and she wheeled out of her dive. Her heart burned with conflict. Only 2 squadrons. That was barely anything compared to the force that had attacked them yesterday. Mag and I with just over 24 friends. That was isolated, was it not? It was close enough. She could attack us with the strength of Maidstones, and her promise to Rogan would be... She growled in her mind. It was close enough to the terms for Kaita, Mayab, but not for Tagata, and Tagata had the stones. Kaita did not think she could lie straight to the Shadeborn's face even if she wished to, and she did not wish to. But Mayab, there was another way. She circled back and landed in the Shade camp, resuming her human form and running to Tagata. "They are here!" she cried. "Mag and Albert, they are just over that hill, Tagata, and they have only 2 squadrons with them. We could crush them with little more than a thought." Tagata looked around the camp. "We have wounded kindred, Kaita. They will not be able to join us in a chase." "Leave them here," said Kaita. Tagata's nostrils flared, but Kaita raised her hands. "They will be safer here anyway. We can draw the threat away from them. They will be able to escape when we... That is, if they need to." She swallowed hard, for she had almost announced aloud that they were expecting to lose this battle. But she could see that she had convinced Tagata. The Shadeborn turned to the camp, and her great bellowing voice rang out. "Kindred!" she cried. "Our enemies await the kiss of our blades over those hills. We will destroy them in the Lord's name. To arms! Death! Death!" cried the Shades. The camp became a scramble. All who could walk fought to be the first to don their sword belts, to heft their shields and ready their armor. "I will keep watch over our enemies," said Kaita. "Look for me in the skies. I will guide you." "Be safe," said Tagata. And Kaita froze as Tagata reached into her pocket. When her hand came out, Kaita froze. And Kaita froze as Tagata reached into her pocket. When her hand came out, it held the brown cloth packet. She placed it in Kaita's much smaller hand. "Take them," said Tagata softly. "If you see your chance, you take it." They will slow me down," said Kaita. "Will slow me down." They will slow me down," said Kaita, hardly daring to breathe. "You do not require speed," said Tagata. "They are on foot, and you fly with the winds. But you should have them with you if the chance presents itself. I trust you, as Rogan does, as our father does." Kaita could not contain herself. She threw herself up, her arms wrapping around Tagata's neck, and kissed her deep. One massive arm wrapped around her, crushing her into Tagata's chest. When they parted, Kaita's eyes were shining. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one is more deserving," murmured Tagata. "We are doomed to lose today's battle, but you may have your chance for revenge. Do not let it slip away." Kaita nodded and turned. Her eyes flashed with light again. She shrank, her clothes sinking beneath the flesh, along with the brown cloth packet. It was an awkward lump in her chest, but she managed it. Feathers sprouted, a beak sprang from her jaw, and the raven form was complete. She launched into the sky again, pursuing Mag and me across the land.
Okay. Good stuff. Time for me to throw a raid at somebody. I gotta end off for the day. Who are we raiding today? Oh, hey, let's raid Fairy Wings. Fairy Wings is
Emily?
streaming. Boom. Okay. Fairy Wings is an awesome online creator, variety streamer. What's she up to these days? She used to do chainmail, but she had a joint thing happen with her hands and couldn't do that anymore. But she's still online, still creating, and still super awesome. An old friend from conventions and streaming online and everything like that. So say hi to her for me. I appreciate you all being here, and we will continue with the audio QC tomorrow morning. I might try to slip a little bit in tonight, but tonight is probably going to be for D&D prep. So, thank you very much for coming and watching, and I will catch you all next time. Bye.
The world. Smart cars do not have back seats. They have the 2 seats. Vlog! Thank you so much for bringing your family to my family.
Is now hosting with 3
Little
viewers.
Raid. We like little raids. Yeah, they're still 2